Parenting a struggling teen can be confusing. It's lonely, and it often feels hopeless. Whether you are parenting a depressed teen, a defiant teen, an ADHD teen, or any other struggling teen, you are not alone. You are not a bad parent. It's time to find what works. It's time for Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens. All right. Thank you, you three, for joining Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens. And we all kind of know each other. We've been in group together. And tonight, I kind of want to hear a little bit of your story. I want to hear what led you to ask for help. I think that there's a lot of families, there's a lot of parents out there who don't know where to get help. They don't know how to get help. And they might have been to several therapists and read a million books, or maybe they didn't read any of it. They just listened to how their parents parent, right? But there's so much feedback. There's so many issues going on, especially right now, that I feel like just hearing from parents who are doing the do, who are trying, who are moving forward. I know things aren't perfect at home, but moving forward, I think can be inspirational for some parents out there. And so tonight I'm hoping that we can start with just how did you guys come to even seek help and get on that journey of trying to help your kids and your family? Maureen, can we start with you?
Sure. So I was struggling with my son and his grades. And my son is really, really bright, should be a straight A student. And he was failing almost all of his classes. And I was kind of at my wit's end of, what am I going to do? How do I motivate this child? He's gonna fail out of school.
Yeah.
He was a freshman at the time, and I went to the school and asked for some guidance of, do you have names of counselors? And I was blessed that they directed me in your direction. So I started coming to the parent support first, the class, which he said, come to the support group, and then we'll set up an appointment with you and your son. And, he's closed off. He was 14 at the time. He's not going to talk. He doesn't talk in those appointments. I mean, he did a little bit, but not much. And, and again, your advice was just keep coming. I want to see you alone, and then maybe sometimes with him. And of course, it's like, what do you mean you want to see me? It's not about me. It's about him. I'm okay. He's not. But clearly I wasn't okay because I was stressed out. I was stressed out about, how do I parent this child? And I was kind of doing it on my own. And just really freaking out over freshman year. This is it. This is his whole life. And he's failing his classes. It could have ruined his entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two things that stick out for me that you've said so far is, number one, struggling with teens' motivation. That's a call that I get almost daily from people is, hey, Brandon, can you get my teen motivated? And they always mean motivated to work and motivated to do school, right? Yes. And I don't have any magic for motivating a teen, and neither does anybody else out there, whether they say they do or not. The other thing that sticks out for me is the idea that you were looking for help to change your child, but your child wasn't really, even though your child was struggling with some things, you were suffering the most. You were the one that was stressed out. You were the one that felt like you had no control and weren't able to parent the way that you knew you were supposed to parent. And so how hard was that shift to you kind of already described it, but how hard was that shift to go from, I'm going to fix my child, to, even though I'm not a bad parent, I'm struggling?
Well, it was a hard thing to see at first, because again, I'm okay. You know, I go to work every day. I'm successful. I'm moving forward in my career. You know, I got my stuff under control. He's the one who's out of control. Like, oh my gosh, get your stuff together. And so, it, you know, you come to the meetings and you start, and all of a sudden it's that aha moment of, yeah, well, part of it was I trusted you. I trusted in the process. Everything that I had heard in those early weeks, months of coming to group, all made sense. Mm-hmm. And it was all, you know, spot on. You know, it's like, I know you say you can disagree with me if you'd like, but I never did. Yeah. You know, it's like everything you said was like just spot on. And, you know, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, it is me. I have to be the one that's okay with this. I have to get okay with realizing that I don't have to have my child measure up to everybody else's kid.
Yeah.
And that's hard, you know, when you're seeing this stuff on Facebook going, oh, my child got the first honors, and my child has this and got into this college and this. My child is so great. Everything is so wonderful. And, you know, people are asking, oh, what sports are they into? What do they do? You know, blah, blah, blah. All these things. And I'm like, he's not into anything. He's into his video games and ignoring me and just not being motivated. And so, you know, it was making that shift of, you know, these aha moments of following the pillars, the 6 pillars, realizing that my being okay with me was better for him, to show him this is what happy looks like.
I love
versus this is what a stressed out naggy mom looks like. And I have to say, because the grade thing, that's just not doing well in class, in school, was nothing in comparison to what was to come.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't been in group, if I hadn't listened to all of this, it would have taken me down. And I truly know that. Because I was just stressed out over grades. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine, again, with everything else that was to come. So.
Yeah. What she said, what you just said is, you mentioned happiness, and that's the whole point. And it's funny because when parents come to me with difficult teens or struggling teens, their goal is, I need to change my child, and I need to change my child now, instead of I need to find happiness for my home while we work with and deal with and figure out these struggles going on with my child and my family and everything else in the home. And that's a hard shift to make, but I think you have to make that shift. You have to think, how can I get happier? How can I become that rock for my child who's struggling? Because they're not going to change right away, but there might be a time that they rely on me. There might be a time, if I protect the relationship, that I help them find the happiness that I find and achieve, regardless of them. And Jamy, before we get to you, there's this saying I always hear, and I hear it constantly, and that's, you can only be as happy as your most miserable child. And it's an unfortunate saying, and it's an unfortunate belief in our society, I believe, because our children are beginning their lives. They don't have the experiences. They have so many difficult journeys to go through. They have so much good and so much bad to experience so that they can become the men and women that they're going to become. And so if parents decide to revert back to, I'm going to be as miserable, or I can only be as happy as my most miserable child, whoa, how sad. And so I believe we have a duty to be the experts in happiness, regardless of what's going on in our world, right? I don't care if I'm struggling with some sort of relationship, or if I'm struggling at work, or if I'm struggling with some sort of other medical issue. I have a duty in my family, and as one of the heads of my family, to be and find happiness despite what I'm going through. And how can I expect children to do that for me? I'm here to model that for them. And I've seen you, Maureen, do that. And it's hard sometimes, but it's the whole point. It really is. And you can't have a healthy relationship unless you're seeking happiness. Right? Jamy, what led you to seek support and help?
I was very unhappy as a mom. I felt like I was a failure. Um, that in my mind, I thought that, being involved parents meant everything. Keeping our kids in sports meant everything. Keeping them healthy, um, being open with them, and them trusting us was enough, but it wasn't. There's the hidden part where, you grow up thinking, oh, I'm there. I'm 24/7 there for them. There shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But then there's that shadow, that dark side that you don't see because your kid's afraid of talking to you about it or hiding things that, might make mom and dad unhappy or not okay, right? So I saw myself angry and miserable and, you know, questioning God all the time. Um, because I do come from a family of faith, and I grew up at church, and and I try to follow what everything was done, but at some point I lost that connection.
Yeah.
And I lost my six pillars because everything was my kids, my kids, my kids. And then I lost me, and I saw myself like a little light bulb that was just turning off. And the more I saw my child miserable, I saw myself miserable and angry and moody and everything. So I'm very open with close friends, and I reached out to a friend, and she told me about this group, and she said how much it had helped her. And she even said, you might not agree with Brandon, you might not, but trust me, the more you don't agree with him, the more you'll agree with him. And you hooked me up in the first day that I came in with my husband, and it wasn't that my kid needed help, it was that I needed help. And I still need help because parenting nowadays, or the way without parenting was, is not how we should be parenting today, especially with struggling kids. That's how I see it. And it's helping me. I'm not done. I think I have where to go, and hey, I still have two more kids. But I'm learning, and I'm learning to accept the things they are and working on my six pillars. And I think this group, it's amazing, and thank you, Brandon. I mean, I'm really thank you. And I know sometimes you see me struggle. I know you see me struggle, and I really like how you call me out. And kind of like it switches my brain, like, but it's not me. It's like I always try to find something to blame on, but it is me. It is me because, again, culture, the way you were raised, the idea of what parenting should have been for you, it's what's haunts me.
But let me
Instead of
clarify something for you and for everybody that's listening. I want to make sure you understand, everybody understands, you weren't doing anything wrong in your parenting. It's just that what you were doing with your child wasn't working at that moment in time. Okay. I don't disagree with your parenting. I think you were already an incredible parent. You did not need me to become an incredible parent. It's just that whether it be society, culture, our parents, or our neighbors, we get stuck in thinking that there's only one direction. And if we can't figure out how to parent in that direction, then we're bad parents. And then we start ruining our self-esteem, and we start ruining our families because we're miserable, because we're just banging our head against the wall. And so when I call you out, or when I challenge you, or when I say, hey, focus on you, it's not because you're broken, it's not because you're bad. It's because you are good, but you're hurting, and you only have control over you. You can't fix your child. What you can do is become the strongest, most awesome person in your child's life, which will make it more likely that they rely on you and listen to you and follow you. But if you're broken down and you're miserable, then you can't be that person for them. You can't have optimum influence over them. And so I want you to understand that I don't in any way, shape, or form think that you were doing bad or wrong. It's just that you came to me and said, what I'm doing is not working.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is one of my favorite rules that I give to people is, even if you think it should be working, if it's not working, stop, please. Right? Stop anything that's not working so that you can make room for what does work. Now, Jamy, you mentioned a couple of ideas. You didn't say the word identity, but what I think you were describing was your identity was in how good or bad your children were doing. And it took me outlining the 6 pillars for you to start recognizing it's time to find your identity outside of parenting so that you could be a strong parent. And so, no pressure, okay? But, and actually, I'm going to list all 3 of you, okay, so that it's not just on Jamy. Can we tell everybody that's watching or listening what the 6 pillars are? Because I think they've been mentioned twice, maybe only once, but I think twice already tonight. So what's the first pillar?
In order, or you want to just...
There's no order.
Okay, because I don't know about order.
Every pillar is important.
Your own education.
Okay, it's career and education, right? And a lot of parents, it's funny because you usually have one parent who is totally focused on career because they got to provide, and then one parent who decides to give up their education and their career and totally loses that piece of their self and identity, right? And a lot of times there's got to be a parent that's not working full-time, if that's possible in a family. But even when you're working full-time, how often do you feel guilty or not want to, make that a part of your identity and your life? So yeah, career and education is one pillar. What's another pillar?
Spirituality.
Spirituality. Isn't it wild how easily we set aside spirituality while trying to insist that our kids follow our spirituality and our religion and our going to church or whatever it might be, right? It becomes more important to guide them in faith and spirituality than to put time, effort, and energy into our own, right? It almost becomes, in some families, like this terrible discussion and taboo thing, and that's always unfortunate to me. So we've got career and education, we've got spirituality. That's 2. What's another one?
Health.
Physical health and nutrition. I can't tell you how often parents come in and they're resentful because they haven't been able to work out or they haven't been able to run, or they'll tell me stories of running triathlons before they had kids and how they haven't done anything since because they have kids. And I'm always like, you just took your child to 6 baseball games in one weekend, and that's just one of your 3 children. And so it's our belief that we have to get our kids involved in everything and do anything and everything for our kids, to the point that we can't even take care of our own nutrition and health. I actually have had many conversations where parents are resentful because they're not eating healthy, And I say, well, what's getting in the way? Well, I got to buy all this junk for my kids. And if I don't buy the junk for my kids, their friends don't want to come over. So I've got to have all the junk in my house. What? Really? Okay, so we've got career and education. We've got spirituality. We got fitness, health, and nutrition. What's
Hobbies.
Hobbies.
And your hobbies, not your kids' hobbies.
Yeah, right. I love how parents, well, my hobby is my kids. It's watching them play baseball. No, it's not. It's hard to manage hobbies. It's hard to put time, effort, energy into hobbies, and sometimes you feel guilty, but it is such an essential part of our identity. Right? My two main hobbies are surfing and cooking. And you know what? I meet people. I connect with people over it. I get my alone time sometimes with those two hobbies. I grow in those areas in a way that doesn't have the pressure of work and everything else. And so it is such an essential part of me being okay. Now, sometimes I've got to sacrifice for my family and I can't put as much time. But as soon as I just completely wipe that off the face of the earth, I have given up a part of my identity.
Yep.
Right? And it's all about putting time, effort, energy. It's not all the time, effort, energy. It's just having a balance in life. Okay, so hobbies. What do we got? We've got career and education. We've got fitness, health, and nutrition. We've got spirituality. We've got hobbies.
Mental health.
Mental health. Every parent that comes through my door trying to get me to fix their child is focused so much on their own child's mental health that they don't realize they maybe need to take care of their own mental health first.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because a lot of times the kids, are they ready to take care of their mental health or admit that there's a problem? Sometimes they are, but most of the time not.
No.
Right? And parents, I love this idea. My mental health will be okay when I fix my child. What if your child doesn't get fixed till they're 40? So you're going to wait that long? Right? I'm going to fix my mental health via my child. That's just wild to me. I don't understand that. So that mental health pillar takes some effort. Sometimes it's reading books. Sometimes it's seeking your own therapy. Sometimes it's admitting to your own mental health issues. And it's making all that stuff not taboo, being willing to talk about it, right? Being willing to address it. And so what's the last pillar?
Relationships.
Relationships, right? And your relationship with your child is important, but it cannot be everything. It can't be your all. Okay? And I tell every parent that I work with, the hierarchy for relationship focus is God, self, marriage, then kids, then everything else.
Yep.
I've literally had parents angry with me because I told them that God's self and marriage comes before their kids. Well, that might be the kind of parent you are, Brandon, but that's not who I am. The day they were born, I committed to making them everything. My only defense is, yeah, but that's not working for you because you just sought me out, right? That's the advantage I always have, is I know they're not in a good place and what they're doing is not working. But we almost feel pressure from everybody, from our parents and from society, to once our child's born, they're everything. And so as I talk about that hierarchy and the 6 pillars, what stands out for you guys? What one thing from both those subjects just kind of stands out and touches you?
So the first time I came to group and you talked about the 6 pillars, as I was writing them in the notebook, I realized how many of them I had let go in this journey. And that was such an aha moment for me, that those items, some relationships, my own fitness, my own mental health, my own hobbies, had been neglected for a really long time. And I was running on empty, and it was time to fill the tank.
Yeah. You can't fill the tank by fixing your child.
No.
Um, you too, and Inga, we're going to get to you and your story in a moment. But what stands out? 6 pillars or that hierarchy? What most stands out for you two?
It was about creating balance in your life. I mean, I was so out of balance with everything, just because all I could see was, oh my gosh, I have to fix my child,
Right.
because he's going to ruin his whole life. And, it's like when I look back on it now, because now he's out of high school, he's a freshman in college. I'm like, wow, I was so out of whack with everything and out of balance. And, there were so many aha moments in group over the past, 3-4 years. It's crazy.
Jamy,
For me,
for you?
for me, it was my spirituality, because I grew up with faith, being Christian, and once my kids came in my life, in our life, because it's not just my kids, my husband's and I focused so much in them and my marriage, because I do come from a broken family, that I made sure that I spend my time taking care of my marriage and my kids. And I did have a relationship with God, but in my own way. But I knew that God didn't just want me to put him on the side and just have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
He wanted me to put him first. And, when I came to the group about a year ago, it's going to be almost a year. Can you believe that? When you talked about the 6 pillars, that was something that I was missing. I was putting everything else, well, in health, like exercising. Not big on that, but I should. I'll work on it, But my first thing was spirituality. And that's where I've always struggled, because I was seeking within my own strength to fix things, and I wasn't relying, and that God was going to take care of it. And of course, he wants me to put that effort in it, but to understand that there's a reason for everything. And then this is another trial, and out of so many trials that I've experienced in my life, it'll be okay once I leave it up to him. I was trying to,
That's good. That's good.
So I'm still working on it.
Great. I love just that idea that you recognize you had to turn it over because your own power wasn't working anymore.
It wasn't.
And until you admit that, and until you turn that over somehow, some way, until you let go of the things that aren't working, you live in this purgatory, this hamster wheel of maybe this time it'll work, maybe this time it'll work, maybe this time I'll figure it out, maybe this time my words are going to work. And it's just miserable, isn't it? Something else I thought of as you were sharing is the point of balancing the 6 pillars is not to perfect them. It's not perfecting your spirituality. It's not perfecting each relationship. It's balancing, putting the appropriate and healthy amount of time, effort, and energy into each pillar. And I think when we get focused on trying to perfect the things within the pillar, right, being the perfect specimen, of health, having my relationships perfect, now we get overwhelmed and it becomes an impossible task. But saying, hey, you know what? I'm lacking in time, effort, and energy in my spirituality. And you know what? I'm only focused on one of my relationships. I need to make some time for my friends and my marriage and everything else. That becomes something that we can overcome. That becomes something that we can do. But Jamy, if you're seeking perfection, right? I don't want you to ever perfect. I think it was the fitness pillar. I just want you recognizing when you're not putting time, effort, and energy in, and try and shift how much time, effort, and energy you're putting in. Okay.
I think it's the fact that I'm trying to not perfect, but it just becomes overwhelming because, moms, we juggle everything,
Yes.
We juggle from all the six pillars, and sometimes we forget about our health. And I've had so many issues, since my early 20s. And then as life just became more busier, I'm okay. I accept who I am, and it doesn't bother me, but I know I should because I need to model that to my kids too. Although they do sports and they're perfectly healthy, but yeah, it's not the perfection. It's just the idea of what I didn't have to want it for my own, and the fact that even though I saw it that I had it, it wasn't what I had the idea of.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And that's where I depressed myself into. Like I hit bottom, like the realization that, but we're good people. Why is this happening to us?
Yeah.
But it's not about being good people. It's not that we've never given her any bad examples. I mean, we're literally devoted parents.
Yeah.
And that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So for me to understand and try to listen and break that curse that I didn't have, it's hard because it's like, oh, I just, how do I deal with it? So I struggle with myself on that.
Yeah.
So that's where I seek for help because I couldn't. And it's okay to be Christian and seek for help.
Mm-hmm.
It goes hand by hand. There's a reason why, God puts the people in my path, amazing group, amazing therapists. So I'm learning and I'm here to help if I can. And I'm learning from each one of, persons in the group. And it helps me. It helps me. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Inga, thank you so much for joining us. Can you share, I want to backtrack to the original question, just what happened that led you to actually ask for help? Because asking for help is not easy. How'd you get to that?
I'm really going to speak as a parent because my son is not here to tell his story. Mm-hmm. So I knew pretty early on that my son wasn't responding the way my other children had to my parenting. And I'm sure you'll recall that I sought you out when he was very little, and you gave me a referral when he was very young. And that led to a whole bunch of other treatments and referrals for my son, which have all benefited him. Fast forward to 7th grade when I choose to attend the 7th grade district parent screening for depression and suicide that's shown to all 7th graders. And in sharing my story there, a mom approached me afterwards and said, I know this group that you need to go to. And our stories were very similar. And she shared that it was a very good group of parents, like-minded parents who had kids with challenges. I have older children, so I knew I was heading into the middle school years. And while I had been able to kind of get through to the teens, I knew that I needed more skills. And also I knew I needed the camaraderie of knowing that my kid's not the only one who's really struggling to live in our area and with the expectations that are in our area. So I started coming to a group, and I've continued to come because there continue to be refinements to my parenting that this group offers. of course, from you, but also from the support of the other parents and the real world in the trenches, what it looks like when you're living it advice. And while it's sometimes seems very simple advice, it is transformative to your home life. And so that's why I've continued to come back to group, because for me, I find a lot of solace in knowing there are other parents going through what I'm going through. I really appreciate their wisdom and advice as well as yours. And I feel like it's the perfect blend of expertise. We have a therapist who's an expert, and we have a lot of parents who are experts too. And to me, that is just such a valuable resource that I will continue coming. And I know you always say, come back even when things are good. And I will be a parent who continues to come back when things are good.
Love that. One of the things I get really sad about is what I hear over and over again is when parents talk to other parents, they get advice and they feel judged, and they get told to do more punishment, or they get told to get more intense, and they get told, I would do this if, right? And with all the good intentions, right? Because no parents being malicious, but over and over again, I hear how almost dangerous it can be to seek help out in your community in the form of just, I'm sitting at the football game, or I'm hanging out with a friend, or, venting to a neighbor. But there is something to be said for parents who take time out of their day to get together and support one another. But that's the key, right? Support one another, not judge one another. And in my mind, it's sad that there's not more support groups. There's not very many, if any, that I can find, places for parents to step out of their crisis, step out of their fears, and really have an honest, good conversation that focuses on them, that doesn't focus on how can we parent more, how can we punish more, how can we reward more, right? And it's a bummer, man. I hope someday, before I die, that I find a way to spread the seed of having healthy support groups for parents, right? There's
found the way by starting this one.
Yeah.
And this is that Blazing the Trail group, because mental health is going to shift, and other therapists are going to get caught up to what we're doing in a group like this, that I do feel is somewhat revolutionary in the ideas. But we are dealing with kids, most of us, who do not fit the mold that other people are talking about. And so to really find that camaraderie without any judgment has just been such a blessing for me.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to, make it and carve out that time. But I leave feeling rejuvenated. I feel rejuvenated within myself. I feel rejuvenated to be more patient with my child, to implement some of your rules, like the 90-10 rule that's been really effective for me, or the, keep it in perspective about your relationship. Is this really going to damage your relationship with your child? And those things have really been transformative to hear. While they are very simple, they are very hard to execute day to day, moment to moment, when you're stressed with.
Yeah.
Let me take a moment, because I think you brought up the 90-10 rule. And then you brought up the concept of putting the relationship first. That doesn't mean you don't get to parent. That doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. But before you do anything, ask yourself, well, am I putting the relationship first? And what's hard for parents to hear in that concept is we're obsessed with setting our children up for the future. So it's like, no, I'm going to put my child's future first. And before I have a healthy relationship with them, I'm going to make sure they become president, because you see what happens. And, I need my child to be the CEO. And it's like, wait. Hey, can we start with, you have a really difficult child, and it's hard to have a relationship with a difficult child. But you're the adult, and we need you to protect your end of the relationship, even when they reject you, even when they are not good at being in relationship with you. It's how do I protect the relationship first? And then, okay, what healthy boundaries can I set within those parameters? Okay, how can I take care of myself so that I can protect the relationship? Okay, now, is this a conversation that I want to have? Is it protective of the relationship? And am I going to get the results that I want? Or is this an insane conversation that's going to result in all bad and poor relationship, and I'm still not going to get them to do their homework, right? And so that concept is really important. It really is the beginning of everything. Is I have to shift from I need to make my child great and perfect, and I need to fix my child, to, you know what, all I can do is protect the relationship and be the man or woman that I want to be as a parent. And that's hard for people to accept. It's like we get it, but not in crisis. In crisis, we let it go. Right? We can get it theoretically when we talk about it, but in crisis, man, it is hard to put the relationship first. And what's funny is everything I teach is healthy for all relationships, not just in parenting. The 90-10 rule. Before I explain for everybody what it is, all three of you, what was it like the first time I introduced you to the 90-10 rule?
What? But that,
kidding me?
I did that 10-90 rule, not the 90-10 rule, where I'm the one that's supposed to be yelling and pulling out my flip-flop, and if you don't do this, I'm going to throw this at you, or that was insane. But
that's the response I get most often is, yeah, right. Okay, you're just trying to make a point. No, I literally mean it. And so the 90-10 rule is spend 90% of your time in positive engagement and relationship with your child. And that's not 90% of your time. It's 90% of the time that you have with them. And only spend 10% of the time actually parenting them. And that is so goes against what our innards tell us to do, right? Our better sense says, no. It's a job. I've got to parent. Of course I got to parent 90% of the time.
I've heard that from other friends, like, well, my thing is, I don't know about your kids, but with my kid, because my kid's struggling, I have to do that. Yeah. You know your kid. You know how you implement that 90-10 with, and it has helped me. And I've actually got compliments and say, Jamy, this group has really helped you. It looks like, it's working for you. And they're happy with me. They're so supportive when I share your 90-10, because then see me more calm and more patient. Like, how come you're not freaking out? Like, I can't freak out. I can't.
I already spent my 10% yesterday.
Exactly.
The unintended,
yeah, go ahead.
The unintended consequence is you end up having these moments where you're enjoying your struggling child again. And they're kind of magical when you first get them. And then they come more frequent. And then you think it's that was just one. It's not going to happen again. And then it kind of becomes a little more predictable.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's really transformative. And then you really start to put all these other behaviors in perspective, and those grades and school attendance and maybe not doing the chores around the house, because you have your eye on a different prize. And that is, I want a relationship with you when you're 30. And I'd really like to have someone right now where I'm enjoying you.
Yeah.
And that's not possible if I'm trying to fix you all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That communication has become more open to the point of like, okay, what now? Where it's like, do I really want to know what's going on in your mind right now? Maybe keep it to yourself. But it is the first thing they come to, and you guys have heard it from me before, is me. And sometimes like, am I ready to hear it? I'm just gonna listen. And you're right, it's that relationship. And that's what I wanted but in a different way. But now I'm receiving it in another way where I'm accepting who my child is, and I'm changing my behavior on how I respond to it.
That's good. That's good.
Right?
Maureen, what was it like
It's,
when you first heard that rule from me?
it's so hard, especially with my son. It's as it pertains to me, and I'm sure he's not like this with everybody out there, but he attempts to show as little emotion as humanly possible. Like everything is flat. His tone is flat. His smile, if you can call it that, flat. Everything is flat. And so, you're kind of like, 90? 90 of what? 90 of zero is zero. And so if I have to do 90, there's nothing, when you're talking such a minute amount of time, it is so hard.
Yeah.
And you just have, it's kind of that just, you know what? I gotta let it go, because I know he knows what he needs to do.
Yeah.
I know he knows what he's supposed to do. And my telling him just one more, even if it's just, hey, do you think? Yeah, no, he already knows. He already knows what he's got to do. So that it really is hard. And again, and I know I'm not alone in having a teenager that literally, if you hear 10 words in the week, that's a lot. So, it's just that take a breath, try to love on them as in whatever way you can.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you have that child that is showing you no emotion whatsoever,
Yeah.
To really try and get through to them the love that you feel for them.
Right.
Outside of just, to really, it's a struggle. It is truly a struggle, because I worry, like, does he think I don't care? Yeah. There is no, there's not a lot of conversation. Does he think I've, just sort of moved on from him?
Oh, yeah.
He moved away a year ago, and it just very little conversation between us. And, and I just, that you got to just let it go. It was so hard letting go of I need to tell you these things. I need you to know this. And like, no, I got to just, let him know that I love him in whatever way that looks like. So, it's hard.
It is hard. And it's especially, like you said, it's especially hard for those parents whose kids have taken away all the time that they would be wanting to parent or be in relationship with or engagement with. And you said accept, you have to sometimes accept what's going on during this season with your child. And sometimes all you're doing during that 10% is planting seeds for when they're how old, guys?
30.
For when they're 30, right? You're planting seeds for relationship and happiness and conversation for when they're older, when they're 30, when they're an adult, when they're not trying to separate their identity from you. And man, Maureen, I feel for you. When you have a child who's not giving anything, who's flat, who's not giving you that feedback, letting you know that you're good, and that they see that you're trying at least to love on them. Oh, man, it would be easy to become resentful. And I know that you're not. And in that case, you really cannot fix them, because they're not giving you the time of day to even attempt to fix them, which means you've got to focus where?
On yourself.
On yourself. And I know it's not always, but I think at times you get little insights, at least, that he knows you're there, and that.
Yeah, sometimes.
Some seeds planted, but then what's hard for every parent is that when the bad moments or the silent moments outweigh greatly the hopeful moments. And what happens is parents will get focused on trying to get their child to understand, trying to get their child to give them that feedback and that understanding, right? You try to fix your child so you can feel okay because you feel terrible. And my theory is, hey, they are too young, too inexperienced, and too sometimes broken right now to help you feel better. And so you've got to find a way to do it within yourself, with your friends, with your marriage, and with whoever else you can rely on, sometimes even a therapist. What's that? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, you guys?
Yeah, it's such a struggle. I don't even know where to begin on that. I had the opportunity recently to see him. Mm-hmm. And, mostly, it's like, okay, let's just keep this light. And then it's, that all the kind of starts to creep in a little. And, I realize, okay, I'm not the perfect parent. I have not mastered all of these skills. And then I have to take a step back and I have to take a breath and go, wow, I kind of mucked that one up. So now let me apologize and say, this isn't who I want to be. Okay, I'm working on it. I'm working on who I want to be and what kind of a relationship I have with him. Mm-hmm. Telling him that. And, just kind of ask for forgiveness now that he's, we're kind of falling into a new phase now that he's out of high school. Yeah. He's still a child, but legally he's an adult. So, it just, and really kind of working on the parent and adult child relationship, even though at 18, I know legally they say they're adults, but, we know better that
they can't
not
take care of themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard. Yeah. But I keep, remembering, the thinking of who do I want to be and how do I want to behave? Yeah. And what kind of a person do I want to be to him? Yeah. And not just as a parent.
Right. I love what you said, because modeling is one of the greatest ways you influence your children. It's not punishing them. It's not rewarding them. It's not even teaching out of your mouth. It's what you model. And I think that it is so easy to want our children, to want our spouses, to want people in our lives who harm us to take accountability. And it is so hard to model taking accountability when you're going, but you're doing this wrong, right? And so to hear, Maureen, that, I'm sure your child had plenty to be accountable for in that moment, but you decided to be the parent that you want to be, which meant taking accountability for something you wanted to do better. You didn't say, oh, I'm sorry. It's, hey, you know what? I'm working on this, and this is who I'm trying to become, and this is what I want to do better. That's truly taking accountability. And I think so many adults in all types of relationships get paralyzed in doing that because the fairness, the justice, and the equality need takes over, right? How can I take accountability when they're more wrong than me? And what a great model and a gift you gave to your child, being willing to take accountability and model for him how to make an amends. And I like to say, make amends, don't say sorry. And making amends includes, hey, this is who I'm trying to be. This is what I want to do differently next time. Right?
I always tell my kids, I'm not perfect. I'm really trying, guys. Mm-hmm. I'm really, really trying. Mommy's also tired and exhausted. But just know that I love you, and I'm trying my best, and I'll try to do I'll try to do better next time.
Yeah. Great.
That's all I can say.
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm sure, Maureen, all those things that you want to tell, your son, you'll be able to tell them one day. It's never too late.
Yeah.
You know, and things that I've always, and I continue to tell my kids that I love them, no matter what, that I'm proud of them, even though they think that they're useless or worthless in my eyes, which is not true. I tell them I love them.
Right.
They're my biggest blessings. They're my biggest pain and my biggest blessings, right? That's, but I know that one day you'll be able to tell all those feelings to your son, and your son will consider them, and will accept them.
Yeah. I think that's the key, is we've got to have hope that if we get healthy and we continue to go down the healthy path as parents, there is going to be a day that we can have this reciprocal relationship with our children. I know that some won't, but I do believe that most parents who decide to go down the healthy, put relationship first path will have that day. And I always say, wait till they're 30, but will have that day, hopefully before 30, that you can have this relationship that feeds you just a little bit. It can never be your identity, and it can never be the thing that has to feed you always. But I do believe that getting healthy is contagious for the children. And so as we close tonight, thank you guys so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay? It takes a lot of courage to share this way. And can we just end by giving just like one little snippet of advice? The one thing that we want people to walk away after hearing this or watching this, mine's going to be stop. Just stop. Stop everything that's making you miserable. Stop everything that's not working, and forgive yourself for needing to stop. Who wants to go next? Inga? All right.
So obviously my first advice would be come to group, because it's really fabulous.
And not everybody can come to group, but yes, I would love to have everybody there.
But in regards to the 90-10 rule, one of the in the trenches ideas that was presented at group was to text your child, because it avoids those spiraling conversations that we all get into. And that was such good advice for me, because it made me feel like I had done my parenting, but it didn't lead us down that rabbit hole of the 3-hour conversation. So it was short, it was sweet. I felt like I did my parenting duty. I'm sure my kid ignored the text, but that was okay, because we both we were in a better place after.
Love that. Sometimes you have got to, that's a form of stop, right? Just stop having the insane conversation, text it and move on. I love that. It's not for every situation, but it's for a lot of situations. It could be so much healthier. Jamy, what's one thing you want people to walk away with? One just little piece.
One that always will forever stuck with me is work on your 6 pillars.
Okay.
Start with that.
Yeah.
Stop all the other insanity, and that'll come in its time. But once you work for yourself, with yourself, and you'll find that light at the end of the tunnel coming closer and closer. And that's it.
Great. Maureen, what's the one little
piece? Well, again, I would mirror everything that has been said so far, because it's all, and yes, you can come to group no matter where you are, because we're doing group through Zoom.
This is true. Yeah.
If you can't do that, read the website, read your blogs. Oh my gosh, there's so much awesome information in your blogs. And that was huge for me in between the weekly meetings, when things just felt like, that I could sit there and read it and go, okay, yes, that just reinforcing everything that we're learning in group. Because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, a group is an hour and a half, and there's so much information coming at you that's so important. Every last little bit is important, that you sometimes forget it all. It's like taking notes. You got to go back and read your notes. And sometimes, you're not very good at Yes, I wasn't. Not always great at taking notes. I don't need to. All the notes are right there on your website. Read the blogs, go back. And some of them I've read over and over again to really help reinforce some of those things.
Right.
Because it seems simple, but until it truly clicks, it's not that simple.
Yeah. And I think if you're not going to read the blogs, just write down something that you hear, because that'll force you to at least focus on that over and over again. Right. And I like that there's so much information. You're not going to retain it all, and it might get twisted around, but the written word is important. Right. Being able to see it in front of you and hone in on that and keep focusing. Again, practice makes perfect. Right. So I love that. Thank you, Maureen. You guys, thank you so much. And for those of you watching and for those of you listening, I hope that something helped you tonight. And I hope that you watch our next podcast. And thank you for joining us at Inspired Resolutions.